On this vote, the ayes are 225, the nays are 173, with 0 abstentions.
Mr. Hinchey. Off aye, on no for Mr. Hinchey.
On this vote, the yeas are 224, the nays are 174, with 0 answering present. The amendment is adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 5, printed in the House Report 112-75 by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Gibson, on which the further proceedings were postponed and in which the ayes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 5, printed in House Report Number 112-75, offered by Mr. Gibson of New York.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, the recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
Amendment vote continuing on the fiscal year 2011 Intelligence Programs Bill. We're on the second of 7 votes with an expected procedural motion and then final passage. We'll get some background on the bill from a Capitol Hill reporter now. We apologize for the quality of the audio. Joining us now is Chris Strom of National Journal to talk about the intelligence programs legislation. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
What can you tell us about the programs that are being reauthorized in the intelligence bill that the House is considering today and tomorrow?
Well, this is the annual intelligence authorization bill. For years, this was a bill that never got through Congress, and last year was the first time since 2005 that an intelligence authorization bill actually went to the president for his signature and was signed into law. The bill authorizes programs and spending for all of the U.S. intelligence agencies, and the total amount that we know it was disclosed last year at $80.1 billion. And I'm told that this year there's a slight increase of about 1%. So basically, when there's all this pressure to cut budgets, the intelligence spending is being maintained and slightly increased.
Any details about the proposed $200 million in savings that Intelligence Chair Mike Rogers says is in the bill? Where's that coming from?
Well, there's been a controversy that has developed in the last several hours over this bill. The overall spending is actually being increased above what the level was for last year. But what happened is that the lawmakers moved money around. And the White House notified Congress late yesterday that it was objecting to some of the proposed changes that were being made. And that came as a surprise to members of Congress because they said that they've been meeting with people inside the intelligence agencies in order to make these changes, and they didn't hear any objections, and then at the last minute, these objections come along. Now, it's important to note that the White House never is not proposing to veto this legislation, so it's just objecting to some of the changes. And one of the changes is that so lawmakers are not authorizing an increase in hiring personnel for intelligence agencies to the level that the administration wants. The bill will still allow intelligence agencies to hire more personnel, but it just doesn't go to the level that the administration wants. And so there's about $200 million that has been shifted around and taken away from personnel hiring and put toward other uses. And this is all in the classified annex. And so we don't have full transparency and visibility into exactly where that money is being spent. But the White House says that it's objecting to that. Now, this is largely dealing with, we believe, CIA, the CIA part of the budget, which is about $53 billion. And so $200 million out of $53 billion is something that members of Congress and their aides are saying the White House is kind of making a fuss about something that's really kind of small in the overall picture.
Is there anything in the bill relating to operations in Pakistan and Afghanistan in the wake of the death of Osama bin Laden?
Well, overall, the bill, because it's approving spending for covert intelligence activities, definitely it's approving spending on activities related to Pakistan and Afghanistan. There's nothing that was specifically put into the legislation directly as a result of the operation to go after Osama bin Laden. Largely, this bill was put together before that operation, the operation to get bin Laden, became public. But one thing that Democrats did end up adding into the bill is an increase in the number of CIA counterterrorism analysts. There was a debate for reducing the number of CIA analysts that the administration had wanted, and when Democrats were originally objecting to the bill, they negotiated to bring back the number that the administration wants. And so the administration is getting all of the CIA counterterrorism analysts that it wanted, whereas before there was a push to reduce that number. And Democrats are now saying that one of the main reasons why this needs to happen is because these analysts were essential in finding and going after bin Laden.
Are there particularly notable amendments to look out for?
The amendments are not that significant. One of the most interesting amendments is that the Congress wants the administration to report back on efforts to go after Anwar al-Awlaki. He is the radical U.S.-born cleric living in Yemen, and who is part of the group known as Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, has been one of the groups that has launched attacks in most recently. It was linked to the attempt to blow up an airliner approaching Detroit on Christmas Day in 2009, and also the attempt last year to mail cargo bombs out of Yemen to the United States. And so
adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 7, printed in the House Report 1125-75 by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Hinchey, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the nays prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 7, printed in House Report number 112-75, offered by Mr. Hinchey of New York.
A recorded vote's been requested. Those in support of a request of a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
Amendment vote continues on the fiscal year 2011 Intelligence Programs Bill. We're on the third of 7 votes now. This amendment, brought by Congressman Hinchey of New York, requires the Director of National Intelligence to report to the House and Senate intelligence panels on information it has regarding the human rights violations of the military government in Argentina. This is a 5-minute vote. Congressman Ron Paul adds his name to the list of Republican presidential candidates today. Yesterday, Newt Gingrich announced his candidacy. Mr. Paul made his announcement on ABC's Good Morning America. He's also holding a campaign rally this morning in Exeter, New Hampshire, and we are recording that, and we'll have it later for you today on the C-SPAN networks. Also, this from the Associated Press: consumers have been paying more for food as well as gasoline, and that pushed inflation for April to its highest level in 2.5 years. The Labor Department says the Consumer Price Index increased 0.4%. In the past 12 months, prices have risen 3.2%, and that's the biggest 12-month gain since October of 2008.
Mr. Graves of Missouri. Mr. Graves of Missouri votes aye.
On this vote, the ayes are 194, the nays are 214, 0 answering present. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 8, printed in the House Report 112-75 by the gentleman from Delaware, Mr. Carney, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which noes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 8, printed in House Report number 112-75, offered by Mr. Carney of Delaware.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And now the fourth of 7 amendments on fiscal year 2011 intelligence programs. This is a 5-minute vote on the Carney of Delaware amendment, acknowledging that railway transportation should be included in transportation security plans for intelligence agencies. From John Donnelly of CQ, the Pentagon would be able to conduct clandestine cyber warfare to support conventional military campaigns and to defend U.S. forces anywhere in the world under legislation approved by a House panel. That provision, a part of the House Armed Services Committee's $690 billion defense authorization bill approved early yesterday, has attracted little notice, could have far-reaching implications. The committee's approval of the measure occurred hours before the Obama administration announced a legislative proposal that focuses more on the defensive aspects of threats to the nation's computer networks. And by comparison, armed services is looking not only at cybersecurity but also at the U.S. military's ability to deliver a devastating attack on an adversary's computer networks or even its civil society. You can read more about this story at CQ.com. You can also watch this week's defense authorization markup at the C-SPAN Video Library.
On this vote, the yeas are 221, the nays are 189, 0 present. The amendment is adopted. The House will come to order. The committee will come to order. Members will cease their conversations or take them off the floor, and they will take their seats. The committee will come to order. That of the well will also be cleared. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
Mr. Chairman, I humbly ask for unanimous consent to speak out of order for 1 minute.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman and members of this great body, this week is Law Enforcement Memorial Week. We have thousands of police officers from across the nation here in Washington, D.C. to honor those fallen officers of last year and years before. Last year we lost 156 police officers who were killed in the line of duty protecting each and every one of us. This year, excuse me please, this year we are on track to beat that record, unfortunately. 68 police officers have already been killed. And I stand today to have all of you recognize their sacrifice and the families who have survived and the police officers who continue marching on. And I yield to Mr. Weiner.
Thank you, Sheriff, for yielding. You know, when we lay down at night to sleep and we kiss our children to bed and we thank God for the country we live in and pray for good things the day ahead, we know that whether we're in a small town with one sheriff or a police department like New York City that has over 38,000, that somewhere there are men and women who are out there protecting us, and unfortunately, as the sheriff points out, sometimes they don't come home. This is a time of year that we join together to pay tribute to them. We know as we stand here today that we do all we can to give them the tools to do their job, but at the end of the day, they are out there every single day. And rarely does someone stop a police officer and thank them because their car didn't get stolen or their house wasn't burglarized or they woke up in the morning and their home was safe. But this is a time of year we recognize that all of them are prepared to make sacrifices for us, and we should join in paying tribute to them. And I thank the gentleman from Washington for yielding.
May we have a moment of silence.
Will all members and guests in the gallery please rise and observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. The unfinished business, the request for recorded vote on Amendment Number 9, printed in House Report 112-75 by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Reed, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the ayes prevailed by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in House Report number 112-75, offered by Mr. Reed of New York.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted, sufficient number having risen. Recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The fifth of 7 votes on fiscal year 2011 intelligence programs. 5 minutes now on the amendment brought by Congressman Reed of New York. This was debated just before votes today. It commends the United States intelligence community for their successful operation in bringing Osama bin Laden to justice and their continued efforts against al-Qaeda. Again, a 5-minute vote here. After this, we expect a procedural motion and a possible final passage vote. We are just learning this morning that the Washington Post is reporting that Wisconsin Senator Herb Kohl will announce his retirement today. That's according to an informed Democratic source. He'll make it official this morning with a noon announcement in Wisconsin. He is the 6th Democratic-aligned senator to step aside in advance of the 2012 election. 2 Republicans aren't running for re-election next year. Again, Wisconsin Senator Herb Kohl set to announce his retirement at noon today, according to the Washington Post.
103. The nays are 0.
Mr. Crowley. Mr. Crowley votes aye. Mr. Gene Green of Texas. Mr. Gene Green of Texas votes aye. Mr. Hinojosa. Mr. Hinojosa votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 406, the nays are 0, with 4 answering present. The amendment is adopted. The question is on the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. According to the rule, the committee rises.
House will be in order. Mr. Chairman.
The State of the Union has had under consideration H.R. 754, and pursuant to the House Resolution 264, I report the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
Under the rule, the previous question is Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 754 and pursuant to the House Resolution 264 reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. The Chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has agreed to H.Con. Res. 50, providing for a conditional adjournment of the House of Representatives.
Is a separate vote demanded? Is a separate vote demanded on any amendment to the amendment reported to the Committee of the Whole? Is on adoption of the committee amendment in the nature of substitute as amended. Those in favor will say aye. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is on engrossment, third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to authorize appropriations for fiscal year 2011 for intelligence and intelligence-related activities of the United States government, the Community Management Account, and the Central Intelligence Agency Retirement and Disability System, and for other purposes.
Speaker. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order. The House is not in order.
House will be in order. Please take your conversations again off the floor. Okay, I can hear you. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
I am opposed in its current form.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Nadler of New York moves to recommit the bill H.R. 754 to the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendment. At the end of Title III, add the following new section. Section 304, prioritization of funding to combat terrorists. A, finding. Congress finds the following. 1. Under the leadership and direction of President Barack Obama, the intelligence community performed with exceptional bravery, commitment, and professionalism in the pursuit of Osama bin Laden, who was killed on May 1, 2011, by the Naval Special Warfare Development Group. 2, the tremendous dedication and personal sacrifice of the anonymous men and women of the intelligence community over the course of nearly 2 decades, including under the leadership of former Presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, finally brought a measure of justice and relief to the families and friends of those who lost their lives on September 11, 2001, and those killed around the world in al-Qaeda-sponsored attacks. 3, Director of the Central Intelligence Agency.
Suspend. Gentlelady is correct. The House is not in order. Those to my right, please take your conversations off the floor. The motion deserves to be heard. Clerk will continue.
3, Director of the Central Intelligence Agency, Leon Panetta, the Naval Special Warfare Development Group, and all those involved in the intelligence operation against bin Laden and in ongoing intelligence-related counterterrorism operations are to be commended for their vigilance in protecting the United States. 4, the death of bin Laden marks the most significant achievement to date in the efforts of the intelligence community to defeat al-Qaeda. But the al-Qaeda network and its affiliates still pose a critical threat to the national security of the United States and must be pursued. 3, prioritization of funding and obligating and expending funds authorized to be appropriated in this Act. The head of each element in the intelligence community shall place the highest priority on funding activities that will contribute to the continued disruption, dismantlement, and defeat of remaining al-Qaeda terrorists and affiliated organizations that threaten the national security of the United States.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on September 11, 2001, Osama bin Laden murdered almost 3,000 Americans in cold blood. As the House member representing Ground Zero, many of these innocent men, women, and children were my constituents and my friends. Words cannot do justice to the toll taken by this mass murderer. Of course, the attack on September 11th was part of a war Osama bin Laden and his terrorist organization, al-Qaeda, had declared long ago and waged against the United States for years. After September 11th, we vowed as a nation to wage war against al-Qaeda, and in particular to bring Osama bin Laden to justice. When President Obama made his dramatic announcement almost 2 weeks ago that American troops had killed bin Laden, we knew that our country had finally fulfilled that part of the promise. Well, I supported and we passed an amendment today to commend our intelligence community for their role in eliminating bin Laden. I stand by my earlier statement that it was inadequate. This motion to recommit, which I am offering with Ms. Jackson-Lee and Mr. Ellison, properly honors all those responsible. It appropriately commends everyone involved in the long road we took to bring bin Laden to justice: President Obama, President Bush, President Clinton, our Navy SEALs, and our intelligence community. The death of Osama bin Laden was a triumphant victory, but our work is not done. This final amendment reminds us that we cannot rest on our laurels. The threat of al-Qaeda remains real and continuing. That is why in this final amendment we make clear to our intelligence community that the highest priority for funding in this bill is the disruption, dismantlement, and defeat of al-Qaeda. We must focus on the materials captured from bin Laden's compound so we can stop them from striking again. I urge my colleagues to join us to ensure that we continue to do all we can to avoid another 9/11. In closing, I want to state my hope that we can have a bipartisan show of support for this final amendment. Commending those who worked so hard to bring justice to bin Laden and recognizing that our #1 intelligence priority is the defeat of al-Qaeda should be expressions that can be supported across the political spectrum. I now yield 1 minute to a co-sponsor of the amendment, Mr. Ellison.
The gentleman may not yield a block of time, but may yield time to the gentleman from Minnesota who's recognized.
I urge all members to join in supporting this very important motion to recommit. We've seen a great victory for our country, and yet we've suffered a tremendous loss. 3,000 of our countrymen lost because of al-Qaeda and al-Qaeda-ism and their belief system. But you know what? They have wreaked havoc all across this world. Whether it's Tanzania or whether it's Nairobi, they have brought murder and destruction across the globe. Even in Pakistan, 80 dead just recently. And so we've got to make sure that they are the priority, they are the focus, so that we can rid the world of this pernicious, evil philosophy that has caused so much harm to so many. And I yield back.
Thank you. I now yield to another co-sponsor of the amendment, the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Jackson-Lee.
I thank the gentleman. I rise to support this motion to recommit. As I introduced HRES 240, and 50 of you supported it because we believe that all of those involved should be thanked, all of America should be thanked. So many of us remember standing on those steps and singing, "God Bless America," singing it loudly as others in America sang and joined together. We were not to be daunted. And yes, this particular resolution thanks President Clinton and President Bush. It talks about the bravery and the courage, and it also acknowledges President Obama calling and directing the order and making sure that all of our resources were used. And it also showed that our Navy SEALs, in spite of the loss of life of so many soldiers, our Navy SEALs came back alive and they captured Osama bin Laden. Isn't it important to make the statement that the prioritization of our intelligence community should be focused on getting rid of al-Qaeda, disrupting them and those affiliated? Vote for this motion to recommit because it does, in fact, provide the opportunity to thank everyone, and it says again, God bless America. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In closing, I again want to stress that this amendment commends all those who worked so hard to bring justice to bin Laden and recognizes that our #1 intelligence priority is the defeat of al-Qaeda. It should get bipartisan support. A very similar amendment passed the Senate 97-0, and I urge support of the amendment, and I yield back.
From New York, yields back his time. For what purpose the gentleman from Michigan rise?
In objection to the motion to recommit.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it's laudable that they would commend the men and women of the intelligence community. We certainly thank them for that. We just did that a few minutes ago. That would certainly qualify for the Department of Redundancy Department as we would move forward. The one that I find mystifying, we came so close to finally making this a bipartisan product. So the first part was great. You said thank you very much to the folks and hid behind the great work of the men and women of the intelligence community, but then you blow up the entire intelligence bill by prioritizing of funding. Two things that does. One, it blows up the work of the framework. There's a priority framework in the intelligence community that sets these standards and tells the intelligence community, here's your priorities, given place, given region, given resources. That happens already. So you basically say, well, we don't believe that you ought to be doing that. We should be doing that. Wrong answer. The second part of it is we have a classified annex. And it talks about very important investments that we in a bipartisan way have worked to get to. Code breaking, cyber security. What you're saying is cyber security isn't as important. You think this is more important. That is not for us to determine. We just went through months and months of work to tell this country, to tell the intelligence community, to put the classified annex together to say, here are the intelligence priorities as we go forward. This bill is intended to gut the work of the last few months that we have just done in a bipartisan way. I tell you, it's a little frustrating knowing that we came that close, Mr. Speaker, to getting a bipartisan product that represents the values of the intelligence community, the resources that they need, and yes, says thank you to the men and women who will never be known for the work they do to keep America safe. I recommend a strong rejection of this amendment.
Yields back. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Opinion chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I ask for a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those in favor, a recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the Chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote on the question of passage. This, though, is a 15-minute vote.
We have votes now on our procedural motion to fiscal year 2011 intelligence programs. This is the last opportunity to change the bill on the House floor. A vote on final passage is expected after this. This motion to recommit is offered by Congressman Nadler and Ellison and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, and it commends Presidents Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton and the U.S. intelligence community for their successful operation in bringing Osama bin Laden to justice. It also requires the head of each element of the intelligence community to place the highest priority on funding activities that will contribute to the continued disruption, dismantlement and defeat of remaining al-Qaeda terrorists and affiliated organizations that threaten the national security of the United States. Again, this is a 15-minute vote. Well, the U.S. Senate is out today. They'll be back at 2 on Monday for general speeches until 5. No roll call votes are expected Monday. Tuesday at 10 a.m., the Senate's expected to consider the nomination of Susan Carney to be a U.S. Circuit Judge for the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. At noon on Tuesday, the Senate will take a roll call vote on confirmation of the Susan Carney nomination. Also possible next week in the Senate is work on a Democrat-supported bill to repeal tax breaks and subsidies for large oil companies. This was the subject of a Senate Finance Committee hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday. The heads of 5 of the world's largest oil companies testified. We aired it live yesterday on C-SPAN 3, but it is available to see anytime from the C-SPAN video library. While this vote is underway, we'll hear a discussion on what's behind high gas prices from this morning's Washington Journal.
And from yesterday's hearing, let me introduce you to our guest this morning, who will be here to talk about what really affects gasoline prices. Richard Newell is the administrator of the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Susan.
Well, you're the 7th person to hold that job. When was the agency formed, and what are your tasks?
Yeah, the Energy Information Administration was formed really in response to the oil crisis of 1973-74. It was the same period of time when the Department of Energy was brought together. So EIA has been in existence for a number of decades, and one of its initial missions and continuing missions is to track oil production, consumption, gasoline prices and consumption. Our general role within the U.S. government is to collect, analyze, and then communicate independent and impartial energy information. And the purpose of this is to inform policymakers, to inform industry decision makers, and to help improve decisions as well as inform the broader public about energy and its interaction with the economy and the environment.
Dr. Newell is a career energy economist. His home base is Duke University. He's currently on leave from the Nicholas School of the Environment. Since taking this job, what is it like being inside the government? Have you been looking at all the statistics it's been sending out over the years?
Yes, I actually was at Duke University for a couple of years before coming back, but I had a long career in Washington, D.C. I used to be based here at a think tank in environmental and energy economics. And so I'm familiar with Washington, but it is very interesting to be at EIA. The role that kind of an organization can play in terms of helping to inform and improve decisions, it's very rewarding. This is a time when the need for improved energy information analysis is critical. We see it in oil markets, we see it in broader energy policy, we see it in environmental policy, not just with respect to petroleum, but with respect to electricity and other parts of our energy system. So it's a very interesting place to be, and a very important place to be, I think, as there's some critical decisions made over the next several years.
And staying with your organization before we get into the numbers, you have been one of the many places in government that has some budget cuts and the new negotiations on Capitol Hill. So what is the exact total of the money? What percentage would be more appropriate? And what effect will it have on the numbers that you're generating?
Yes, so we, in the fiscal year 2011, which is the budget that just came out, we did have a significant cut to our budget. It was about a 14% to 15% reduction over what our funds were last year. Coming more than halfway through the year, this has a magnified impact. And because EIA, we don't make grants, so all of our money goes to federal employees paying their salaries or to support services that support us with our ongoing survey and analysis operations. So we have had to act very quickly in order to balance our budget this year. Unfortunately, we need to cancel a number of different surveys this year in order to balance that budget. We're hoping that recovers next year. We have a significant increase, at least that's been proposed with our FY 2012 budget, so we're hoping to turn that around. But some of the near-term impacts which we have put up on our website, just so it's clear to our survey respondents and to users of our data, there has been a significant impact. Some examples are the Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey, which is the country's sole source of statistical data on energy use in commercial buildings. So this would be used by architects, by builders, by those who are interested in improving energy efficiency in commercial buildings. We've had to cancel that for this year. The last time we have data on that is actually from the year 2003. So it's a survey we only do every few years, but unfortunately, due to lack of funds, we're going to have to cancel that. There's a number of other surveys on the oil side. Our annual report on oil and gas reserves, we're going to have to postpone for next year. There's other studies such as our International Energy Outlook next year, which we're not going to be able to produce. So we're adjusting as best we can to the situation, and we hope that the importance of the work that we do is recognized, and if not, we will do our best to be efficient and work with what we have and produce the information that we can to help inform decisions.
Okay, well, let's move from that to the topic at hand, which is the gas prices Americans have been paying. Can you explain to people why gas prices have spiked in recent weeks and also why they are now trending down?
Yes. So there's four major components to gasoline prices. There's the cost of crude oil in gasoline. So refiners have to purchase oil to make gasoline and other refined petroleum products. There's the cost of the refiners beyond the cost of oil in order to produce the gasoline. So you can take the difference between the wholesale price that refiners sell at and the cost of crude that they have to purchase to make gasoline. So that's two components, the cost of crude and the refiner margin. Then there's the cost of distributing and then selling gasoline through retail stations. That's a third component. And then there's federal and state taxes. Now, the federal and state taxes part has tended to be very constant over time. That's at about 41, 42 cents per gallon now. That's 18.4 cents per gallon federal tax and 23 cents per average on state tax. But the state tax part varies considerably by state, and so one of the reasons we see regional variation in prices has to do with state level taxes, which if you compare the lowest tax gasoline state to the highest one, it can be as more than 30 cents per gallon difference there. But that's relatively stable, so that's not a reason for changes in the price at the pump that we've seen, although it is an explanation for regional variation. The major cause of the recent increases in gasoline prices is twofold. One is increased cost of crude oil. So crude oil had come up last year, in the third quarter of last year, but was around $90 to $100 per barrel as we came into 2011. Since then, we've had a number of things happen, particularly unrest in the Middle East and North Africa. This started with Tunisia, moved to Egypt, but really the largest impact on crude oil prices has been since Libya, because Libya, of those countries, is the largest oil producer. So since the situation in Libya has unfolded, they produce normally about 1.8 million barrels per day of liquids, which the principal part of that is crude oil, and export about 1.5 million barrels per day of that. And that's really all offline at this point. They're really not exporting much at all. So that's been a significant supply side hit to the global oil market, which has in turn raised prices. Prices had come up from the $100, $90 to $100 range up to $115 to $125 per barrel. They've since come down, but we're still seeing the impact of these oil price increases in retail gasoline prices. So that's the first component, increases in oil prices. The second component is increases in refinery margins. This is due to both planned and unplanned outages at refineries in the Gulf Coast and in the Northeast. So each year, typically in the spring season, refineries bring down their refineries for routine maintenance. So those are called planned outages. But we've also this year had a significant number of unplanned outages. And those two types of outages combined have significantly brought down gasoline stocks in most regions of the country except for the West Coast and Rocky Mountain area, which are normal or above normal. So we've got depleted inventories of gasoline, which have really driven up wholesale prices of gasoline beyond what the oil price alone would warrant. In addition, the recent concerns about flooding along the Mississippi River has not yet significantly impacted refineries, but there's a concern that it potentially could. So that has also had some upward impact on wholesale gasoline prices over the last several weeks. So these two components, higher oil prices and then higher wholesale gasoline prices due to refinery downturn and higher wholesale gasoline prices due to refinery downturn and low inventories has led to increases in gasoline prices. So as of this morning, the retail price of regular gasoline reported by AAA was $3.98 per gallon, and it's been there for a little while now.
I have a historical price chart, 60-month average from 2006 to now, and you can see the wide fluctuations. And when it took a big dip in 2008, is that all consumption-driven? That's right after the financial crisis?
Yes, exactly. So the significant drop after the financial crisis was due to the economic downturn. So there was not just a U.S. but a global economic downturn. This significantly reduced the demand for refined petroleum products and in turn oil, and that really very significantly brought down the price of oil and gasoline.
So we're seeing right now, again, from all the news reporting, that consumption in the United States is down because of high prices. So if, in fact, consumption is down, how will that affect prices?
Yes. So one of the reasons why the price of oil has come down in recent days is concerns about the demand for gasoline and other refined products coming down. Now, it's a bit reading tea leaves. It's still unclear at this point the degree to which there has been a demand effect. There are a number of indicators that are pointing in that direction. We put out weekly numbers at the Energy Information Administration, which are closely tracked by markets. That has been indicating signaling a decline in demand. How this will unfold over the next several months, we still need to see. The weekly data tends to be more variable than our monthly data that comes out. The International Energy Agency has also brought down its forecast for demand increases over the next year or two. Now, overall, though, compared to last year, we're still forecasting increased consumption of petroleum products this year relative to last year, and again an increase next year. It's more the rate of increase may be diminished somewhat, potentially due to higher prices, but also the other element here isn't just the price of oil and the price of gasoline, it's also the outlook for the economy as a whole. So there's two competing factors. One is how fast our global economy is growing, and the other is how high is the price of the product. And those two factors can point in different directions at times, and then they can point in the same direction at other times. Over the last week or so, they seem to be pointing in the same direction, which tended to underpin lower prices.